My name is Mark Baer. My guest now is William Miner, author, musician, educator.
My
what
goodness.
a dude.
Thank you, sir.
So let's start with the jazz. You've been associated with the Jazz Festival for a long time. You're a musician for a long time, and you've been here a long time. So,
Well, I grew up in a totally musical family. My mother's brother Max had an orchestra agency in Detroit, 20 bands. My uncle Bill Gale was one of them, played handsome alto saxophone. My mother could sight read and play all the Rodgers and Hart, Irving Berlin. You know, I started out as a drummer, but I took piano lessons also when I was about 14. So I was playing professionally both drums and piano at the age of 14, and then I had my own, what we called an orchestra, which was really a humble combo, what they called them orchestras in those days, with two vocalists when I was 16. Yeah.
and then
So I went down to New York City when I was 19 in 1955, and I ended up playing at a place called the 456 Club. And they had a good combo, and they didn't have a piano, so a man named Bruno Ferrari, I swear that was his name, with the fedora, the cigar, the bulge in his coat, took me to a warehouse in Brooklyn. And we went up to the third floor, and there were nothing but pianos in sight. And he stood back and said, "Pick out a piano, kid." And I was terrified. And I, "Yes, sir." So I played in New York and did benefit shows for the Hiroshima Maidens, who were some women who were brought to restore their facial features through an Issei service organization. And I've been playing off and on ever since.
And so, let's talk about your relationship with the Jazz Festival. That's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
How did that get started?
I did a book on my summer of 1990. My wife and I went to the Soviet Union, and we did 9,000 kilometers, and I interviewed jazz musicians and wrote a book called Unzipped Souls, a jazz journey through the Soviet Union. And on the basis of that, they were looking, when the 40th anniversary came about, there were very fine writers who've been writing individual articles about the festival, but I got a call out of the blue one morning from Jim Costello and said, "How would you like to write the book on the 40th anniversary?" And it was a thrill. Tim Jackson and I sat down, and who was still alive? Sarah was gone, Woody Herman was gone, Duke Ellington was gone, but I ended up interviewing Dave Brubeck, Max Roach, Percy Heath became a friend, John Lewis. It was an incredible experience. You know.
So I got to talk about the phone call from Clint Eastwood.
Oh, my goodness. Is he listening?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was supposed to dictate the foreword to me. And he was out of town making movies. So I came home one day, and there was a message on my answering machine. "Bill, I came down to the festival office today, and you weren't there. I'll find you. I'll find you." And I thought, oh my God, Dirty Harry's going to track me down to the ends of the earth. And actually, I never did get together with him. I think Jim Costello, he dictated the foreword to Jim. You know, and then I did get hired to work on a film, Warner Brothers afterwards, and he was the executive producer of that film. You know, so that was a very interesting experience also.
So you've seen the festival change and grow, and you've been there for a lot of the key minutes. And
right.
I just just before we move on, just give me some snapshots of just magic moments, because you were there.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the, because we did it the last festival, I was the host for a panel. Dave Brubeck's The Real Ambassadors, with a libretto by his wife Viola, and it was an incredible performance. And Yolande Bavin, who was in that, was a member of the panel, and also some people. One who had written the book on Louis Armstrong was in that. And I think I look back on that now, and I listen to that recording, and it is just a spectacular. It's something the Brubecks wanted to present on Broadway, and it was very much ahead of its time. It dealt head-on with segregation and other matters, and I guess producers in New York were just reluctant to go near it. And Brubeck told me at that time, he said they were doing on a closed circuit, I guess TV, they filmed it, but they wanted, I think, $750 or something from him. And he said, I didn't have $750 in my wallet, much less in my bank account, much less in my wallet. Yeah. You know, he said that is one of the great tragedies of my career, is that I do not have, there was a single performance.
Wow.
Carmen McRae, Louis Armstrong, and Lambic, Hendricks, and Bavin, yeah.
Wow. So let's look at some photographs here.
Okay.
If we may.
Well, that's me in the backyard, our humble home in Pacific Grove.
Okay.
And, I've been working a lot with bassist Heath Proskin. And what happened is, I guess, we have to get into the book, but I've just finished a 6-year project. And one of the things was to make, as a family history is incorporated, is to make like people out of the 19th century that I discovered who were relatives come alive as fully as I possibly could. And I found that music really helps for that.
May I hold the? May I
sure,
hold? Let's talk about this. Well,
we recently gave a book release party for this. It's
Okay.
called The Inherited Heart, an American memoir, and it covers everything from my birth up to the age 17 when I went off on my own to New York later, a little bit later, to family history going all the way back to Middlesex County, Virginia in the 17th century, etc. And so we had a book release party at the Works, and that's Heath on the left, Jackie Hope, who looks and sings like an angel and also can act. And so she took some pieces of a spin-off that I'll talk a little bit too, called The Love Letters of Lynchburg, and she performed a couple of roles from that. So we had a little bit of everything.
She can sing. She's good.
And yeah, one of the things we thought we would do is, the book is about those 40s, 50s years, is to take some of the tunes out of that I grew up on, believing very much in the romantic. I mean, I thought, if I left a girl at the door, kiss or no kiss, when I walked home, a full studio Hollywood orchestra was going to accompany me all the way home. So we thought we'd take some of those tunes, like Hoagie Carmichael's The Nearness of You and Paper Moon, and Jackie sang them. And I think we ended with What a Wonderful World.
Oh.
And it was a great, we had standing room only, and that was a great night, and we're going to do it again at Old Capitol Books, if I may make a public service announcement.
Yes.
On Saturday, April 6th at 2:30 in the afternoon, we'll repeat pretty much that the program.
May I hold this flyer up?
Sure, yeah.
There.
Yeah, yeah.
Old Capitol Books.
Old Capitol Books, downtown Monterey, on Saturday, April 6th at 2:30. We'll repeat it. And we've been asked to do it also at my favorite bookstore up in San Francisco is Bird and Beckett. And I don't have a date for that yet, but the owner wants us to come up. And he has Sunday afternoon jazz and acoustic Americana shows, and he asked us to repeat it there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be entertained here. I'm going to ask you to read.
Okay. Well, we're talking music, so I'll do a little thing about the band I had at age 16.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're going to just do a short little piece here.
There it is. Here it is, yeah. I organized my first real band, a 6-piece affair with me on drums, and we began to play for dances and proms in southeastern Michigan. We even had a vocalist, a stunning girl, pretty as a creature of 17 can be, no Lee Wiley or Chris Connor perhaps, but a subsistent voice. One of my fondest memories is of arriving at her large front door, ringing the chimes, and being ushered inside by this pert delight, whose name was Sharon Stanton. She'd be dressed in full skirt and beige or powder blue cashmere sweater with just enough chest to make you stop and consider. Her slender song thrush neck was adorned with a string of pearls. Her parents would be truly decked out, set for an evening at the country club. Mr. Stanton in midnight blue tux with plaid tie and cummerbund. Mrs. Stanton dressed in a magnificent gown and sportive jewels. They always insisted that I play a couple of tunes on the piano, You Belong to Me or As Time Goes By, while Sharon sang and they swirled across the living room like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, complete with turned-down lights. We then went off to our respective gigs. All surface stuff, I suppose, but I liked it and I took it all very seriously. At last, I thought, I am making it on my own, a man of the world at last. I'll do one little section about playing. The band was a big success, although I wasn't making much headway with Sharon. She didn't take me any more seriously as a potential love prospect than I probably deserved, so I got passed over in favor of a halfback on the football team, a guy who responded to the name of Tom the Bomb, solid muscle from cranium to metatarsals. And worse yet, he felt the band was interfering with his love life, so Sharon left us. That hurt, but fortunately I had a wide stock of blues to sing. We played gig after gig, even without Sharon, and I took cynical delight after a night of watching the square couples shuffle back and forth over dance wax, the floor splayed with soft-colored light, soppy signs glowing in the dark along the walls, Jim and Janet, Ted and Jane, Bev and Doug. The couples molesting, mugging each other in time to my music. That's what hurt the most. Should I just finish this paragraph?
Go ahead.
I took cynical delight in packing up after each of these dates, watching the last crinoline satin sheath young lady, a wilted gardenia clutching her left breast, depart beside some smirking stud, nothing but basketball markings and busted crepe and the smeared winter tracks of dance wax left behind, while I unscrewed the bolt on my ride cymbal and packed my drums, item by item, away in their cozy canvas covers, assuring the male vocalist we were trying out that he was a more than adequate replacement for Sharon. Carting the drums piece by piece out to the car, watching the red summer exhaust of the lovers depart, knowing they'd all grown horny in their iceberg hearts to my music. I had fun with that.
That's lovely.
That's a dance in 1953.
Let's talk about this.
Love Letters of Lynchburg. I was very fortunate. There are 3 chapters in this book about my great-grandfather's first cousin's son, a man by the name of Charles Minor Blackford. And he was a very successful lawyer, 27 years of age, in Lynchburg, Virginia, when the Civil War broke out. The family had strong Union sympathies, but Lincoln said, we're coming through, and we want troops. And 3 of his brothers had already joined the Confederate Army, so he was, next thing he knew, he was in the 2nd Virginia Cavalry. And he and his wife, Susan, corresponded all throughout the war, from Manassas First down to the fall of Richmond, and I think they're some of the most beautiful love letters I've ever read. I went to the Special Collections Library at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, and they lock you in a room, and I held this like Japanese calligraphy, and they Latin and Greek educated, beautiful writers, and he's on a horse, like at Gettysburg, viewing things, but writing her these 7-page letters to me. So I got very fortunate. A man named Greg Starbuck of the Historic Sandusky Foundation commissioned me to take a 2-volume edition of their letters, reduce it to a 12-page script for 2 voices, and I wrote original music for it. And we performed it here 4 times so far, locally. Talon Thomas is Charles Minor Blackford, Kitty Petrocelli was Susan, and Richard Mayer, a wonderful flute player. I played piano, and Heath Proskin played bass. And the CD came out, and they're distributing it. They distribute at the Historic Foundation, Sandusky Foundation.
So before we go on, where does our viewer find this material?
If you go on, well, me personally, I guess, on my website, which is just bminor.org, not .com, or just contact me. And it's being distributed by the Historic Sandusky Foundation in Lynchburg, Virginia. Okay, that's probably the easiest way. That's like Amazon.
Okay, and your book we can find on Amazon?
Amazon.com, yeah, and also at the Capitol Books. Okay. We'll have copies, and they do now, and also there are still copies at the bookstore in Pacific Grove, The Works.
Okay, here you are signing books.
Yep, that was from that same night.
And this is...
that was a great evening.
Yeah, it was packed, and...
you were there.
Of course I was there. Yeah, I wouldn't have missed that. I mean, it was really... well, you've done, again, I'm a spoken word guy, so, and we've, that's just such an interesting combination of spoken word and music and the power of what that is. So let's talk about you as a literary man a bit. And you were a professor for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I came here in 1971 and taught at NPC for 25 years. And previously, I taught at the University of Hawaii and State University back in Wisconsin. So I have 32 years of teaching experience.
Yeah, you did it for a while.
I did it for a while.
And so let's talk about the poets you love as we close out.
Oh my goodness. Well, my favorite poet is a Russian poet named Osip Mandelstam, who had an incredible history. He had the misfortune at the time of the terror to write a poem about Stalin calling him a murderer for his closest friends at a party. And the next morning he received a knock on the door and he was taken away. And his wife, Nadezhda, which means hope in Russian, wrote an incredible book called Hope Against Hope, which is about that experience. And his poetry, miraculously, everything's online today. I was looking at contemporary composers who'd set his poems to music. He was a persona non grata, and he was not even, people didn't even know he had existed until the 60s, and his wife published that book, you know. So I found music that was being, his poem set to music, and all of a sudden I found a recording that he made in 1923, I think, of him reading. And everything I'd read about him said he did not recite his poems, he sang them. And it's, I was on the floor almost in tears. I mean, there he was, Asap Mandelstam, alive in my studio reciting his poem.
Well, I think I saw you do one at the Alternative Cafe, and it was really beautiful.
Was that, I don't, was it somebody else's or one?
No, one of his that you did.
Yeah, I may have.
And you know, it was quite stunning. And, and what about American poets?
I like the whole thing, you know, Hart Crane, I admire very much, William Carlos Williams. Oh my goodness, if you start that, I did this in Russia with pianists they admired, and all of a sudden I was reciting like 100 different pianists, and so there's so many American poets that I admire, but I think Hart Crane, Wallace Stevens.
Wallace Stevens, great.
Yeah, the whole, you know, people that I more or less came of age on, T.S. Eliot, the works, Ezra Pound.
Well, I'm starting to hear the music. Goodbye, Mr. Miner.
Okay,
thank you
it's been
very
a pleasure.
much.